Jesus Christ as gay? Okay, that's not the case. Are you familiar with the secret gospel of Mark? I wasn't going to do a video on this, but I was talking to somebody recently who I kind of got on board with the idea that this is actually a very short and a good one to demonstrate how the analogs work and how simple they are to understand if somebody wants to. But if they can't and they read it at face value, they're never going to understand it. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the channel. Let's jump into it. Now, the way I'm going to do this video is I found a video already that it's an older video from a guy named Lee Strobel, and he is I'm not quite certain what he is, but I'm going to play some parts of the video, and I'll let you know ahead of time. I would normally not listen to somebody like this, and you may or may not feel the same kind of an impact as you listen to him. To me, it's very much a somebody who is speaking with confidence and saying things that are absolutely wrong. I know that they're wrong. And I'm going to correct it. But he does a good job of explaining how this came about. So I'm going to play that, and let's listen to that, and we'll see where we learned about the secret gospel of Mark.
There was a pretty well-respected scholar from Columbia University named Morton Smith. And several years ago, Morton Smith said he made a huge discovery. He was in a monastery in the Middle East, and he found in the back of a book where somebody, in a book dated 1646, somebody had copied a bit of a letter, an ancient letter from Clement of Alexandria, who lived in the 2nd century. And in this letter, Clement quotes the secret gospel of Mark. And the theory was that there was a papyrus that was crumbling, and so some monk in the 1600s said, I better copy this into the blank pages in the back of a book to preserve it. So here we have supposedly this huge discovery. Clement of Alexandria, right back in the 2nd century, quoting the secret gospel of Mark, which Morton Smith said was written by Mark, who wrote the gospel we find in the New Testament.
Okay, so far so good. I'm going to interrupt this every once in a while because I'm not quite sure about borrowing people's videos if I have to interact with it from time to time. Well, I'm going to do that right here and say that the book of Mark, we don't know who wrote it. Matthew, Mark, Luke, we don't know who wrote those. They are attributed to them, but biblical scholars, even way back when, they don't know who wrote them.
But this was the secret gospel. This was only for the sophisticated initiates. This was only for those who have superior knowledge. This was only for those who are ready to get the secret teachings of Jesus. Now, we don't have it all in there because it only has 2.5 pages and it's only quoted. But what do we find? Well, we find something very, very bizarre and controversial.
I can't wait. Tell me.
What we find is the story of Jesus raising a young man from the dead, and then this young man coming to Jesus and spending the night with him. And frankly, Mark, the homoerotic undercurrents to this cannot be missed. The implicit implication of this gospel is that Jesus was gay.
Okay, let's stop here and bring some more into it. And I'm going to go read, actually, let's catch up to where he is talking about from other textual material. I'm going to be reading from the Lost Scriptures, Bart D. Ehrman, that's where this comes from. And this is the secret gospel of Mark. Let's go ahead and read the history on this. The secret gospel of Mark is a longer edition of Mark's gospel that has been known only since 1958. While cataloging manuscripts in the library of the Greek Orthodox monastery of Mar Saba, located southeast of Jerusalem, an American scholar Morton Smith came upon a 17th century edition of the Letters of Ignatius. According to Smith's own account, the final blank pages of this volume had been used by an 18th century scribe to copy a portion of a letter allegedly from Clement of Alexandria, a church father who lived at the end of the 2nd century and the beginning of the 3rd. In this letter, Clement indicates that Mark had produced 2 versions of his gospel, one for church members at large and the other for the spiritual elite who could grasp the full mysteries of the kingdom. Clement indicates that this second expanded edition, the so-called secret gospel, had been entrusted to the Christians of Alexandria, his own city, but that it had come to be misused by members of the Carpocratian sect, a group of Gnostic Christians known for their illicit sexual rituals. The contents of the stories, especially the first, show why this version of the gospel could have seemed so dangerous to the church at large and so interesting to the Carpocratians. Jesus raised a youth from the dead who then loves Jesus and begs to be allowed to stay with him. The story is reminiscent of both the raising of Lazarus in John 11 and the story of the rich young man of Matthew 17:16 through 22 and Mark 10:17-31. After 6 days, the youth comes to Jesus in the evening, clothed with nothing but a linen garment over his naked body. They spend the night together with Jesus, teaching the youth the mystery of the kingdom of God. The highly unusual character of this story, in particular its homoerotic overtones, have led scholars to debate virtually every aspect of the secret gospel. Did Clement of Alexandria actually write this letter, preserved only in an 18th century fragment that is no longer available for examination? Smith published photographs of the document, but the original is inaccessible. Why is this gospel, or even Clement's letter, never mentioned by any other ancient source? Is the letter an ancient forgery, a modern forgery? If the letter is actually by Clement, were the stories that it narrates known before the end of the 2nd century? Do they actually come from a second edition of Mark's gospel? Could they instead have been originally part of the first edition of the gospel, only to be deleted by Orthodox Christian scribes concerned with their ethical implications? Were these stories widely known by Christians already in the 1st century, such as the author of the 4th gospel? Could they in fact have actually happened? All right, what I want to point out is that even there you get some, could it be that? Is it possible that? Is it, this is what happens when you don't know. You're just throwing out ideas and you're speculating. There is something that can be interpreted from here that can be very directly gone after without having to speculate. And I am also not going to be concerned with the accuracy of the historical beginnings of this document. What I'm looking for is whether or not it is a living verse that contains interactive steps for self-healing. That's what I'm looking for, always. And what I'm going to suggest here is that because biblical scholars, religious people, they're not interpreting this. They're reading it at face value. They're not using the technique to unlock something in there. Therefore, they are stuck trying to prove whether it's true or not. I don't have to do that. To me, there's a lesson in there, and it doesn't matter the source. To them, it matters the source because they have a different thing they're looking for. They're looking for the viability of the faith, while I am looking for what is nested in the teaching. The religion is the ark. The story is the ark. The myth is the ark. There's something inside. Think of it this way. Take a fable, Aesop's fables, and the tortoise and the hare. If you were to tell that story and somebody was just arguing about whether or not it could be true, what kind of a tortoise was it? What kind of a hare? What could actually happen that way? How could they communicate? What method did they use? Was one of them faithful and the other one not? Was one of them sinful and the other one not? They're not understanding there's something inside of it. Jesus verses, same thing. It's just a little different style.
And this is claiming to be back from the original?
Claiming to be the secret teachings of the very person who wrote the Gospel of Mark that we find in the New Testament. But this is only for people ready to hear it. Well, as you can imagine, this is very controversial. And yeah, and so this had some fanfare when it came out. I investigated this particular case, and I don't want to spoil it for the readers of my book. But what I will tell you, Mark, is that as investigators examine the handwriting, as they studied the forensic evidence of this alleged finding, which, by the way, has disappeared now. Nobody can find it. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. What we find is conclusive, in my view, conclusive evidence that Morton Smith, who is now deceased, that Morton Smith made this up. He forged it. He created this as a hoax. And not only did he create it as a hoax, he wrote a book about it for Harvard University Press. I don't want to spoil it for the readers of my book. He wrote a book about it for Harvard University Press. I don't want to spoil it for the readers of my book, in which he elucidated on this supposed finding. He wrote another popular book about it. Elaine Pagels, the very well-known writer, Princeton University professor of religion. She wrote the foreword to one of these books. So here's the disturbing thing, Mark. We see this allegation that's staggering, that Jesus may have been gay, he may have had a physical relationship with this young man and so forth. And what do we find? We find the very liberal scholars who were very critical of the Gospels in the New Testament, even though they date right back to the first century and are based on eyewitness accounts. They poo-poo those, they question those, they doubt those.
But they this, they that. You know what? Sounds like a flat earther to me. I know it's a little bit different, but when you've got something to say, have something to back it up with. I'm not going to pick on him, though. That's not really what I'm here for. I really wanted to illustrate how controversial this is. I've got something else that I want to play real quick. This is from a different source. This is a place that I do like, and I frequent this channel quite a bit. But this is just another idea showing how the controversy of whether or not the material should be viable or not. When I get done with that, we'll move on and actually start with the interpretation of the verse to find out what it really is for.
We are Myth Vision. Welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. M. David Litwa with us again today. And Dr. Litwa, I'm not going to waste any of your time. I've asked many scholars, Elaine Pagels, Dennis McDonald, Richard Carrier, Robert Price. I mean, and then the list can go on and on. I've asked Dr. Bart Ehrman. You know, the list goes on. And I have to pitch it to you. Is the secret Gospel of Mark a forgery? And also, if you don't mind, educate us a little bit on what you found out.
It's actually another scholar source. I'm kind of out in the field on my own out here someplace, doing something that no one else is. So, okay, enough on that. Let's go ahead and read what is actually there. And citation 1, they came to Bethany, and a woman was there whose brother had died. She came and prostrated herself before Jesus, saying to him, Son of David, have mercy on me. But his disciples rebuked her. Jesus became angry and went off with her to the garden where the tomb was. Immediately a loud voice was heard from the tomb. Jesus approached and rolled the stone away from the entrance to the tomb. Immediately he went in where the young man was, stretched out his hand and raised him by seizing his hand. The young man looked at him intently and loved him, and he began pleading with him that he might be with him. When they came out of the tomb, they went to the young man's house, for he was wealthy. And after 6 days Jesus gave him a command. And when it was evening, the young man came to him, wearing a linen cloth over his naked body. He stayed with him that night, for Jesus was teaching him the mystery of the kingdom of God. When he got up from there, he returned to the other side of Jordan. I'm going to read another citation here, a short one that was left out of that guy's video. The letter goes on to indicate a passage not found in the secret gospel, and it was, obviously he was responding to somebody else. Somebody must have written him a letter or inquired about something or whatever, and he's replying. But the phrase, naked man with naked man, and the other matters you inquired about are not found in the text. So that's important there too, that there's an establishment of whatever is there is pretty subtle. Okay, the first thing we want to do is establish how analogs work and how they play out in the psyche, because that is what this has to be right here. This is how it's going to work. An analog is simply a term that is a placeholder that we need to interpret. Let me come up with an example. First of all, in the physical world, if I'm hungry, I need to consume. I need to eat. I need to eat food in order to maintain my physical body. In the spiritual world, I can also consume. And that's the analog right there. I'm going to consume. I'm going to go eat something. And you might pick up a book, which means what? I'm going to go absorb this. I'm going to take this in. I'm going to make it a part of me. I'm going to consume it. What happens if you're fasting? You're not eating in the physical world. You're skipping meals. If you're fasting in the spiritual realm, you're shutting off the world. You're staying quiet. Those are the analogs. That's how they work. That's how they play inside. What is clothing? What is naked? Naked in the physical world is, standing there with your junk out, Oh, embarrassing. Yeah, we don't want to do that. We need to cover up. We need to cover ourselves up. So we do that. We cover what we would be ashamed of. We cover what we would be ashamed of. That shifts just that accurately into the psyche, into the spirit, into the soul. When we think of it this way. If you can manage to think of anything in your mind right now that nobody knows about, only you, and you're not going to let it out, that's it. You've got garments over something. You're hiding something inside that is going to be shameful, hurtful, painful, angry, somehow, some way. It's not good for you. That is analogous to covering it in a garment. I'm ashamed. I got molested. What do? I hate everybody that does this and does that. That's the way I act out. I've got walls up and barriers against things. I have things inside of me that I won't let people know. I have garments on. I have shame. I have things about me that make me feel bad and that affect the way my life is. Okay, so think of this. While we are in the physical world, standing in public naked is not a good idea. In the spiritual world, if you can be completely naked, you've got nothing to hide. You're harboring nothing. You worked it all out. You've let it go. You found relief. Your life is, you don't have fears. Those are there. Now, I'm going to suggest that this nakedness is an analog that starts right in the beginning. What do we have in Genesis? Right in the beginning, right at creation. The second version of the creation story. In fact, I'll pick it up right here. I don't need to read the whole thing, but verse 24 starts it. Therefore, a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, and they become one flesh. Okay, remember that. One flesh. One flesh. Man and woman together. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. What do we have going on here? This is metaphor. Okay, it's not a real story. Creation didn't happen that way. The people, it's really, that's a very archaic way of maintaining thinking about that. This is a creation, all right, but it's not the creation of the world. It's the creation of each human being. Each of us is Adam, our consciousness. And when we're first born, that's all there is to us. We're just a happy baby. We don't have any other parts to us. As we grow and develop, as we name things, as we learn, we develop our other portion. 5, 6, 7 years old, we are now remembering things. We know stuff. We know that, that banana is yellow and it tastes good and I can eat it. We know all of those things. When we were just infants, we didn't know that. Now we're knowing those things. However, we haven't had any bad experiences yet. The Adam and Eve at this point in time have been created. The first sin hasn't happened. What are we? Therefore, the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. We are one flesh, conscious, subconscious, mind, soul. Call it what you want. And we're combined. We're happy. We don't have mental conflict. We don't have inner conflict. Okay? So, in an analogous manner, being naked and not being ashamed means we are harboring nothing. We've got nothing at this point in time in our life to, What happens then? We go and sin. But what is sin? Consuming of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We are eating, we're consuming, we're learning. And literally eat a tree. We're learning about good and bad. We're having bad experiences in life. We're getting beat. We're getting molested. We're getting all kinds of things. We're getting told what a piece of crap we are, or those people are like this and those people are like that, and we need to do that to them. And all of these things we're beginning to learn. And we lose our happiness. We lose the Garden of Eden. And we have offspring as a result. But what are the offspring? The offspring are the concepts that are not dealt with. And sometimes they don't need to be. We can have good and bad concepts. You might really love somebody in something, and that's a good thing. And when you see them, you're happy. You might have had a bad experience. Somebody hurt you, and maybe you don't think about it, but every time you see that person, it relives again. There are issues in there. Those are considered offspring, and they're good offspring, bad offspring. Cain, Abel. The stories work that way. I'm going to grab something from the Gospel of Thomas. Well, this one's pretty spot on here, easy to see. Jesus said, do not be concerned from morning until evening and from evening until morning about what you will wear. That actually sounds familiar, doesn't it? We know that from the Bible. Don't worry about what you're going to put on. His disciples said, when will you become revealed to us, and when shall we see you? And Jesus said, when you disrobe without being ashamed, and take up your garments and place them under your feet like little children, and tread on them, then you will see the Son of the Living One, and you will not be afraid. Does that work out in the mind? Yeah. First of all, don't be concerned from morning until evening on what you will wear. How weird is that? What does that even matter? But we don't normally do that anyway. This is worrying about what we are bothered by. We need to find ways of letting that go. However, right into the next verse, the disciples ask when you're going to become revealed to us. And when you disrobe, this is taking those things off and putting them under your feet, which that alludes to the idea that you're taking your problems. Once you get rid of them, once you strip them off, they will actually elevate you above the ground. They will actually hold you up. We're looking to rise up above the mass of people that we're in, the life that we are connected with. We want to rise above that. As long as we're holding on to all of the issues that keep us there, it's not going to work. Once we strip them off, that actually allows us to, there we go, like little children. Little children haven't picked those up yet. Then you'll see the Son of the Living One, and you will not be afraid. That is when we're going to experience the glory. This goes on and on. You cannot go through the Bible without finding people being naked, getting clothes put on, taken off, doing things like that in a variety of places and sources. And it's always alluding to this idea right here that we are hiding behind hurt. And that if we want a better life, we must work through that hurt. Remember, your Father who sees in secret rewards you in secret. As long as we're holding those things, how's life? When you let that stuff go, life is good. Yeah. In this case, what do we have? Jesus goes into the tomb. Yeah, that's always a part of these stories. The teaching, going into a cave, going through an opening, going through a passage. When you find this teaching in myth, you'll find it like in Jason and the Argonauts at the point where they have to sail through the clashing rocks. With Moses, it's the point where they have to go through the Red Sea. Jesus teaches that many stand outside the narrow gate where only the solitary will enter in. What is solitary? Two or more combined. That is where we become unified again. But back to this story, what this is doing then, you look at the boy, there's a young boy in a cave. This is turning inward. The tomb, yep, you're turning inward. You're going into there. You're finding an offspring. You're finding a young boy that is very lightly clad. I would say that this is analogous to the idea that we have lesser issues that need to be resolved. They still need to be stripped naked. We're not having sex with them, okay? This is stripping off the garments that are hiding what it is that you want to hide. This story works, and it appears elsewhere, but not exactly in this manner. But the elements are nevertheless there. The thin-clad boy at various points in the biblical stories. In this case, yeah, it's homoerotic. Who wrote this one? Obviously it wasn't going to get selected to go in. Where did it come from? If it's a recent forgery, it contains the elements from way back. So somebody, if it's a forgery, somebody knew what I'm teaching right now. Did they? I don't think so. Maybe it's possible. But then they did it in a homoerotic manner. And where would that come from? I think about that and go, yeah, Roman bathhouses. Gee, where does this come from? Guy sitting around going, oh, I got another version. How about this one? That one's not going to fly in the public. This one will. And again, just to reiterate, I treat everything that comes from Jesus or comes from Lao Tzu, the Buddha, other teachers of that era, in this exact same manner. They play out in the psyche using variations of analogs. And they get us to the same place. A good flow in the Tao, nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within. They're all mental states of being. Enlightenment. That's what we're looking for. It has nothing to do with gay or not being gay. It's an homoerotic vehicle. I am not committed to the idea, or I don't need Jesus to be real. That is the ark. That's the carrying case. What I want to know is what is inside the box. And that's what I find here. People that need it to be real or need it to not be real, they're going to make money off of arguing over, there's conflict. When I get finished, the conflict isn't there anymore. It's not worth anything. It's just an individual path to find it if you're looking for it. That it is all there, and it's in the ancient material. Remember, they didn't have media. They had brains. They had brains. They figured out things that we've lost. However, they were building the stories in a way that the population would carry them, and a few would understand. So if you're here getting on board with this, welcome to the few. It's a small world. Okay, a couple of more comments then. The very idea that it is a secret teaching that is maintaining something for a special certain elect or something like that, whatever this is right here is not unusual. There's nothing in this little bit of text that you don't find elsewhere in the Bible once you realize it's a living verse and you play it out in the psyche. In fact, I want you to know that this is the idea of stripping off garments is it's an analog that is used quite commonly, but there are other analogs in other teachings that are all going to get to the same point. Okay? Stripping off garments is like pulling the weeds from your garden, or making friends with the skeletons in your closet, or exorcising your demons. All of those are getting us to the same point, that what this is inside of us has to go, what we've accumulated. We've had experiences and we hold an emotional charge with them. We cannot change the experiences. We must change the emotional charge in order to change our life. You want a good life? What does Jesus tell us in the Bible? If you come to the altar to leave your gift, and while there you realize you have aught against your brother, you've got issues to resolve, why are you giving a gift? You're looking for good graces. So if you want good graces and you realize you've got issues, go resolve those issues and the good graces will come about. Okay, I don't know what else to cover on this one. There's more that I could cover on that verse. There's more things I could say, but it's in other videos that I have. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask below. But I'm going to suggest that this is not about, yay, Jesus was gay, or, oh, Jesus wasn't gay. This is a forgery. It's about, taking something off. Here's another. This one plays on the outside. Think of this way. Think of having your children. And you're on this path, but you weren't on this path to begin with. And there's things you said or things you did or outbursts you had that later you're like, oh my God, I need to get a hold of this stuff. But you've dumped some things on your kids. And maybe they're not resolved, and you need to go talk to them and let them know while they're young and before they continue to accumulate things. Hey, what I said here or what I did there, this is why, I'm sorry. Make sure that you take their garments off while they're young and while they're light. Hope the video was helpful. Love one another. I'll see you in the next one.